All right, we are live. And if you saw the original little thingy I put up for myself and Liz, I fucked it up. I went right into going live, and with Restream, you can't go back live after you've been live. So here we are at this new one, and I'm on Twitch and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all the places right now. So I'm going to talk about my sponsor, Liquid Death. I'm drinking the sparkling water today, and it's refreshing. It's excellent. Just check out liquiddeath.com. Even if you don't drink the water, just check them out. Their ad campaigns are nutty, and they've got people doing crazy stuff like biting out the middle of the can and drinking the water that way, and death metal playing in the background. And I just absolutely love it. So that's all you get, Liquid Death. I'm done. Um, Today, I'm really excited to have Liz on. So Liz Miele is she's originally from New Jersey. She started stand up when she was 16 and has done everything on her own, which I think is really cool. She's really made her own way through comedy, and her appearances on Wait Wait Don't Tell Me are fantastic. Her last special was just fantastic. All of her albums are great, and I'm just really stoked to be able to talk to her about a few things that I think we have in common. So I'm going to bring Liz up right now. Liz.
Hi.
Thanks. I'm going to move you over here
Oh,
so
yeah.
that it makes me more comfortable. But I'm gonna I gotta pull up your last. I want to pull up Self Made because there was a joke on there. Well, I remember the joke because I just listened to it. But your last special that you did that came out in 2020, right? It came
Mhm.
out towards the end of 2020. You've got this joke that runs into a bit that I identified with so much because I just feel like there, we have a lot in common. But it's about the lady with the greeting card, and and I am so much the same way. So first of all, I kind of told you when we started, when I talked to you for 25 seconds before we started, that I don't do small talk, and I think you're probably the same, and that I feel like we all have enough going on in our life that we don't need the long version of anything, and we also don't need to jump into other people's lives, especially strangers that seem to be leaning on us for something that we cannot give them. And I that joke just hit me really well as far as understanding where you're coming from.
Have you experienced, like, I remember two things happening as I've gotten older. One is learning the labels to things that I was dealing with or problems that I had, and having this like aha moment where I felt less like a freak and more like somebody that has an issue, whether it's,
Yeah.
finding out that I had generalized anxiety disorder, or that I came from an abusive home and that I had to deal with, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
things where I'm like, yeah, that did seem weird, or, oh, this does suck. And like, there's a label to it. And there's something freeing about
Hmm.
knowing it's not you, it's this thing, or it's not you, it's this thing that happened to you.
Hmm.
So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I didn't know there were words or labels for how people kind of treated you. So my example is, maybe 4 years ago, I was on tour with my buddy Hari Kondabolu, and we
Hmm.
went and got a drink after our show with a friend of his that wrote a book, or was writing a book about emotional labor.
Hmm.
Never heard that term in my life. And I was, what is emotional labor? It had something to do with pregnancy. I was like, I don't know. You give birth. Is it about babies? She's like, no,
Hmm.
it's something actually very common actually to women, but there's also professions, but it's about um, this belief that, or it, maybe not, we'll start with what it actually is. Emotional labor is the work that you take on when you deal with other people's problems. So
Mhm.
if we were married, I might come home from work and talk about how my boss was a dick and I had the worst day. And you're taking on the emotional, that's emotional labor. You're listening to
Mhm.
my day, how I felt. And that's what you do for people that you love. That's
Mhm.
fine. But then, as a woman, often we are presented with 10 times more emotional labor because
Mhm.
it's believed that we're caretakers. And I spent my whole life like literally holding people up emotionally, and I've been
Mhm.
exhausted. And now that I understand it, now that I'm starting to set boundaries, when it happens, like before I was just angry, but it's like I'm used to it.
Mhm.
Now it's like, are you fucking kidding me? I don't
Yeah.
fucking know. And I just lose my goddamn mind. And
Yeah.
luckily I've also been in enough therapy that I didn't yell at this woman, but in my mind I was like angry at like a level 10, and then
Yeah.
as soon as she left I was laughing at like a
Yeah.
level 10 because I could
Yeah.
see it all so clearly of why I was pissed, why it's not okay, and why this is relatable.
Right. Right. And the funny thing is there is a self-absorption within people that you could be standing there with a single greeting card in your hand, or maybe just a payday, or a Kit Kat or something like that, and there could be tears running down your eyes, and they are so self-absorbed that they are still going to lean on you.
Yeah.
And you especially, I mean, you're an approachable looking person, whereas I am, so I have to look at it a couple different ways. I am not an approachable looking person because I'm 6'5", I'm a monster. People walk away from me instead of to me. So I feel like if somebody is opening up to me, a stranger that's opening up to me, I'm like, gosh, I'm the only person you can talk to.
Yeah,
And
that's a bad life.
yeah, and then sometimes I dig in and say, okay, talk to me, buddy. I want to hear what's going on. But sometimes I'm like, you know what? I got a lot going on, and I cannot fit you into my life, and I shut them down. So
Yeah.
I really got I really got that one, and it it was something that you don't that I didn't really consciously understand until you actually said it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool that things like that go on. And I do want to mention, the reason why I approached you to do my show was because you were on a show that I love. Okay, I love breaking down bits. I love the two guys that do it. I can't remember their names. The two whitest men in the world are the two hosts of that, but they are very focused on writing and the business and stuff like that. And I highly recommend that all my listeners go listen to Liz's episode because she talks about how she was able to overcome the fact that she was 16 and super popular from 16 to 18 to 20, and then all of a sudden everything went to shit, and she was able to build it back up again. And she put a video out during the pandemic that got 1.2 some million views, and she gained a lot of followers. It's fantastic. It's all great, but that's not what this one's about. This one's going to be a little bit different. So I want to, because everything you said in the self-made, and then I listened to the one before that you did in 2017. I can't remember the name of it, but I listened to that too. But things like
Do you mean
uh
self-help me when you say
yeah,
self? Okay.
self-help me, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um and I'm sorry, I lose names all the time.
It's
I'm
all good.
surprised I even remember yours. But the floor drugs, floor pills.
Yeah.
When you mention, I mean, that is my childhood just encapsulated. And nice word, nice pun there. But the fact that you did all that and got it out of your system, and I did the same thing. But I never said no to anything. And as a matter of fact, I always was usually the instigator. I was always searching out different ways to expand my mind and dull my mind by pharmaceuticals and things that were green and white and all that kind of good stuff. But and my parents were always like, "Well, who put you up to this?" I'm like, "No, no, no. I
Yeah.
am the one that put other
Yeah,
people
yeah,
up
yeah,
to
yeah. I
this. You know,
started it.
I'm the leader." But I really I dug that, and the fact that you overcame that and really just kind of don't want to say overcame it. You kind of moved on from that fairly early in life. What was it that, it could have been a problem for you, like a real problem, and you ended up just moving on from it? Were you bored with it, or did you decide early on that, you know, drug abuse could potentially be something that is an issue in your life?
Excuse me. Hold on one second.
Yeah, you're all right.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Um, Honestly, I got into it because I was extremely unhappy. Like I was deeply depressed and um, you know, didn't really see a purpose in life and did what I was supposed to do. I went to school, I got good grades, I took care
Mhm,
of my siblings, I did what my parents told me to do, and I just felt so much responsibility and so much pressure and felt so scared and unseen that it was a break. Drugs and alcohol were a break from this life that I didn't understand and I didn't and like I was in middle school and high school and I was so overwhelmed and had so much that I was responsible for, to the point where when I went to college and I had to just do my own laundry, like,
uh-huh,
and wash my own dishes and make my own dinner, it was like, what else do I do with my time? Like, it was
uh-huh,
like, I don't think people really understood. And like, my mom was on a podcast with me. It was just like, don't tell your mother. And I told a story about something that happened in high school that she didn't know about. And we're close now, but she said something at the end of the podcast where she was just like, they asked like what was so great about Liz when she was younger, and she was like, she was always there, she helped me out so much, and she pretty much raised her brothers, and I don't know what I would have done without her. And it was really kind, because me and my mom have never openly talked about that time.
mhm,
But while I did do a lot, I was from like 9 to 18, I was a part-time mom, and
mhm,
I can see that now, but I I needed a break, and drugs were a break, and I didn't realize I had anxiety. Like I did gymnastics until I was 14 and I quit because I it was too much and I couldn't handle it. And now, years later, 10 years later, I found out I was having panic attacks while on the
mhm,
balance beam, and all these things that I didn't understand was anxiety and panic attacks. So weed made me feel calm and made me feel like I'd be okay. Alcohol made the anxiety go away. Pharmaceuticals just were something to focus on or be excited about or do or experiment. Like I had very little joy. What I think helped was when I discovered stand up, just watching stand up, I loved it. It made me so
mhm,
we're a dark family, but we're a very funny family. And I could make my mom laugh and it would completely change her disposition. And I could make my brothers laugh and they would listen to me better. And like
mhm,
just humor alone made the day bearable, made my life bearable, made me literally internally feel better, because I think we all know the like endorphins and dopamine that gets released with laughter. But
mhm,
then writing stand up, performing stand up, having this thing that I loved and wanted to do, and having a drive and having a goal and having a dream just took me. I really don't think I stopped being depressed until I was probably 28, but
mhm,
it gave me a purpose. And honestly, as cheesy as it sounds, I think comedy is the reason I don't do drugs or
mhm,
drink anymore. Like I was smoking cigarettes. I quit those first. I quit those when I was 17. And
uh-huh,
then I quit I think I quit alcohol first. I can't remember. I just stopped drinking at parties because that prevented me from driving to gigs, and I wanted to go do gigs.
Uh-huh.
And then weed was always hard to get. Weed was the thing that I liked, and it was harder to get, and pharmaceuticals were clearly like random. And I just stopped really going to those parties. So since I stopped going to those parties because I was doing stand-up, I just kind of
Mhm.
pulled myself away from that. And then when I went to college, I really didn't do anything. I didn't start smoking weed again until I became a waitress. And then my anxiety came way back. I
Mhm.
remember I lived like 2 blocks from this place that I was a waitress at, and I would come home and I couldn't relax. I was like, oh my God, did I ever get that woman her salad? Like I couldn't let it go. Like I was just, so it's funny, like drugs has always been a thing to kind of help me just put my brain on a shelf.
Yeah.
And now I have panic attacks on everything. Like I stopped drinking again. And I never was like, when I was younger, I did things pretty hard, but when I went back to it in my teens and stuff, I never felt like I had a problem. But I stopped drinking because I had stomach issues. I stopped smoking. Weed was like, again, the last thing I enjoyed. And I stopped doing that because I started having panic attacks and it just wasn't fun anymore.
Mhm.
So it's
Yep.
like, it sounds really cheesy, but I really feel like having a purpose and having comedy is the reason I'm okay.
Yeah. It's so funny that you are, man, I'm echoing here. Stop the echo. It's so funny that it seems like you quit things at the same time as me, but mine was for different. You started at the same time too, junior high,
Yeah.
and mine. I met my wife. I've been with my wife for 38 years, and I met her, and I was fully immersed. It was like 100%. Scott does every drug that could be found or given to him and drinks all the time and stuff like that. And my then date said, I really don't like that. And I just quit everything cold turkey. It was just like, okay, I
Yeah.
I don't need it. And but now, I'm a social drinker, but I'm not, I don't like, I can have a beer rather than have 17 of them or whatever. So it's funny that the timeline is similar, but it's also very telling that you started comedy when you were 16, and it feels like to me that I can't see you doing anything else. And you went to college, Joe, and you went through the motions and still did comedy while you were in college and all that. But can you see yourself doing anything else?
I have no skills. I don't even know if I could. I mean, I I can now with the skills I built up both in stand up and in the business aspect of
Mhm.
comedy see where I have abilities and talent. And I mean, I'm everybody's manager. Like I'm
Right.
always helping my friends write emails and how to pitch things and best way to negotiate money and stuff like that. So and that's what I've done for myself. So, you know, if the creative part of me wasn't passionate and I didn't love this, I can see the business side of me liking helping people and knowing, having an innate ability to see what's great about other people's talents and put that through the forefront. And so I really like the creative business aspect of comedy. And of course, I'm passionate about what I do, so I have a good motivator. But that's the same way I think what my friends do is amazing, and I want to help them. So I see like management on some side of if I never got into comedy, or I just like creative ideas, and I like you had your sponsor at the beginning of this. My podcast has sponsors. I've done corporate gigs and stuff like that. I like um that Mad Men quality, that kind of ad sense
Yeah.
of how do you make the people know that this is what they need. And I feel like the same way that I have to convince people that my problems are like see my problems from my perspective and be on my side. Even if they don't agree, they're still on my side. They still stay for the whole journey. I think the same thing can be said for advertising. So whether you need these paper towels or not, I'm going to tell you why we have the best paper towels. And even if you don't need these paper towels, someone in your life needs these paper towels.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel with my story. You might not relate to being annoyed about a woman sharing about her mother's death in a line. That might not bother you, but I'm going to tell you why it bothers me and why you should be on my side on this and that's, so I think this kind of storytelling is a part of advertisement, but this kind of knowing everybody's perspective and bringing it all together to get a purpose there's something in me that just knows how to do that or has built up that skill.
And stand-up is marketing. You're just marketing yourself.
Yeah, marketing my
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it's very simple. Now, you talked about, I think it was early in the show when I was listening to the guys talk to you. You talked about life at home not being great, and that a lot of that gave you the anger and the just emotional being broken down to want to put that into words and get that out. So you start you talk about therapy, but it was a long time before you sought out therapy. Do you feel like what you did on stage created some sort of therapy for you, or did it make it worse in some ways?
Um, there's therapeutic aspects of comedy, absolutely. I think there's something, and you can kind of see it with social media now. If you go on Facebook, it's a lot of people telling you their opinions, sharing about their day, venting about something that happened at work, being passive aggressive to people that are also on the network. Oops, it seems like one of you are having connection issues. I don't know if that's me or you.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's
But
bad.
but Facebook has kind of shown you that people are trying to express themselves, maybe not in the best way. And I'm not an advocate of putting every thought and feeling you have on Facebook.
Mhm,
But I think what comedy did for me is let me know that I had opinions because I really felt so shut down and I was in a very much speak when spoken to kind of upbringing that it allowed me to find how I felt about things, find myself. Um, in doing that, express how I actually felt because I wasn't even connected to myself in that way.
mhm,
See the reaction of other people and feel less alone. And that is such a good beginning to healing. I don't think it's the end all be all. I don't think it's the only thing you should do. I think the same way that, like, let's say I vented to you about my day. I'm like, this happened and then this guy fucking did this. That could cause some relief for me because I'm
mhm,
taking all this anger and I have a place to put it and it's not just bottled up inside. But if I do nothing with it, if I don't understand why this made me so irrationally angry, or if I don't see why this feeling of not being in power is a common theme that keeps coming up and why it's so important to me or so much debilitating for me, then I'm just going to keep having the same problems and you keep venting and it becomes less and less productive. So I think
mhm,
in the beginning, just knowing my opinions, knowing my ideas and voicing them and having people laugh or feel connected to it back was extremely rewarding and helped me feel confident enough to get to the next level. But
mhm,
eventually it becomes the law of diminishing returns, and less does it feel good and less does it feel healing.
mhm,
And that's when I think connecting with friends, because I think the closer you are to somebody, the more they can either say something to you and or just understand you. But then therapy and if need be, medication is are the next kind of routes. And
mhm,
I can honestly say that I didn't like myself and I wasn't in a good place until therapy. And it took years of therapy to even work through a lot of my issues. And I was just talking to my little brother about it because he just started therapy. But I was like, it sucked and it was hard and it can still be hard at times. But I am a shadow of the person I was before, and I like who I am, and I couldn't have
Mhm.
done that without therapy.
Were you worried that, taking care of your anxiety and your depression, getting a handle on that would make you a, weaker comedian?
Absolutely. I think that's the stereotype that healthy people aren't funny. But I think it's something that Gary Goldman said, either in his special, The Great Depression, or in an interview about the Great Depression.
Mhm.
But at some point, or even Gethard, why can't I think of his name?
Chris?
Chris Gethard, thank you.
Yeah.
I think they both made different points to say, yeah, but if I'm not here, if I can't get out of bed, I can't do comedy. And
Mhm.
I think at some point we all hit this wall where, yes, my neuroses or my issues might be funny, but at some point they become detrimental. And that's why we have in comedy the highest suicide rate and the highest drug overdose rate. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
if you listed how every comic died in the last 50 years, it's overdoses and suicide.
Mhm.
It's insane. So, it's tragic, and it's not, and maybe that might be what gets you in, but what keeps you around is taking care of yourself. And so I don't feel less funny getting help. If anything, I feel like I have an even more unique perspective, and I still have anxiety. I still sometimes deal with depression. I still have my anger issues, clearly, but I handle them better. I like how I handle them better, and I understand them better. So maybe I'm not completely reacting the way I used to, but I'm also coming from a different perspective when I tell my jokes. And maybe I have a different audience because of that. I don't know. But, you know, my first album I made 8 or 9 years ago, and my last album was a year ago. And those are two different people that made that. And my
Yeah.
fans are watching both of them, and my there's definitely a lot of differences in them, but at the end of the day, I could tell you the flat out difference is that I like myself now. And
Mhm.
then I know what I'm doing, as opposed to, it was a girl finding her voice and finding herself that wrote the first album. And then the second album, you see a little bit more of myself. And now this is, I yell more. I'm more, I gesticulate more. I'm
Yeah.
more open. And I've had people say, I liked you better when you were deadpan. And that's like somebody saying, I liked you better when you couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't need that fan. Yeah, and that's okay if you related to me. You're depressed and you related to depressed Liz. That's totally fine. There's a place for that, and that's why it was recorded and put it out in the earth.
Yeah.
I people love that album, and I put it on YouTube, and that makes me so happy. But I'm not her anymore, and I don't
Right.
ever want to be her again. Both in the sense that I was 27 or 28, and deeply, deeply depressed. So you make art, but you also have to grow. And I think that's the same as a person. I don't ever want to be in my 20s again,
Mhm.
ever. There's not enough money in the world to make me go back.
Yeah.
And especially teenagers. You know what I mean? So to
I
me,
do. Yeah.
I'm in my mid 30s. I'm pushing closer to 40, and you know, who knows who I'm gonna my goal is just to not be bitter. Like there,
Mhm.
because that's the other, you know what I mean? Like you go too far in each direction, or
Mhm.
be a dick. I don't want to ever be an unrelatable asshole either.
Mhm.
So I think, to me, I just want to get healthier, and if I lose fans because of it, or people don't feel as relatable, I feel bad for them. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Go get help.
Right. I like to, as far as comedy albums are concerned, I like to compare them to, like, musical albums. So, in some musical groups, their best album is their first album, and nothing else compares. The second album is just the stuff that they, had left over from the first album, and the third album, they're trying to reinvent themselves, and it doesn't work, and it goes on and on. In some musical groups, they get better as they go on, like, like the Beatles, they got better as they went on. The Who got better as they went on. The Kinks, so, on and on and on. And some comedians, it's the same way. Some comedians, their first album is their best, and they never get any better. But then you look at somebody like George Carlin, you look at his first stuff, and it's it's really good. It's funny, but it's not near as good as the last album he put out. And with yours, I feel the same way. And I think that when you get control, I don't ever want to say that you overcome depression and anxiety, because it's almost like alcoholism. It's always there. You just have different ways to deal with it. And when you understand how you might have reacted, because the old you is still there, even though you've gone past that. When you understand how you might have reacted and put that in contrast with how you reacted, I think that gives you the greeting card bit,
Absolutely.
because you couldn't have written that when you were in your 20s,
No.
because you wouldn't have been able to grasp the notion of, hey, I really don't want to talk to this person, I want to look at my phone, but I'm not going to blow up at her because I know she's going through shit too.
Yeah.
So yes, so yeah, I can dig that. And I I feel the same, because I've gone through some similar things, but I started comedy super late, and I feel like if I would have started really early, it just would have been awful. I would have been like the next River Phoenix or something like that, and
Oh,
just I would have been a footnote. So yeah, but I really respect the way that you can look at these things from the younger perspective, and then put the current, more healthy perspective spin on it. So that's really good.
yeah.
Yeah. Now I noticed something about your delivery during an entire album or special that seems to flow throughout your albums, maybe except for the first one, in the you start off a little low key, and you talk about like situations and other people and things, and then you start to ramp up, and you get a little bit more angry as you ramp up, and then you hit this peak where you are so mad that you're going to strangle somebody, and then you bring it back down. You're almost like a roller coaster. Do you do that on purpose? Do you see that little wave going up and down as you're putting your set together?
I always start slow. I think I remember so many different bookers and stuff being like you're low energy or you need to be quicker. And
Mhm.
the truth of the matter is that I think I go into every situation just kind of knowing that I'm a tiny woman and people
Mhm.
don't know who I am, and it is overwhelming to have all Liz all at once. I
Uh-huh.
am
Yeah.
the nice way people call me is a pistol. That's like the friendly way. But the truth
Yeah.
is one of the things that I think I was really embarrassed about, and now I'm slowly accepting, is I am a lot. I have a lot of opinions. I'm aggressive. I'm blunt, and I kind of can cut you with wit, whether you're talking to me in a conversation or if you're a heckler, or even just how I put my perspective out there in a formatted joke. But I believe that if you get to know me, you'll accept it a little bit more than if I
Mhm.
just smack you in the face with my full personality. And I don't know if that's truthful or not, but I do think they're having awareness of how people perceive me, because at the end of the day, we all are in our bodies and
Mhm.
we can't change that. I am depending on how my hair is, an ethnically ambiguous tiny person.
Mhm.
I'm a woman, which has its own, people have their own belief systems about women in general, let alone women that speak their minds, let alone women that do comedy. So I've always been in a position of being acutely aware of how people are taking me in before I even open my mouth.
Mhm.
Then I have to deal with the stereotypes of how people feel about how I talk about things. So
Mhm.
I think in general, I've just learned to ease people into me and into who I am. And then once I feel like I've won them over, I can be more myself, and it's more accepted. And then just like any kind of fight, you lose steam. You know what I mean? You're like even when you're still mad, you're just like holding your head and you're just like, I don't get why you don't get it, but it doesn't matter anymore. Like you're
Yeah.
just, so I think an hour is a really long time that I think I start slow, get to know me. I start feeling comfortable and da da da. But then I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I think it's a little bit of a roller coaster just because that's the nature of how people get to know people, but also I think the nature of a long show. And I don't know if it's completely conscious, at least the middle and the end. But I also I start out wanting people, like, kind of trying to make sure people like me and know what I'm about, be fully myself in the middle, and then take bigger chances at the end because
Mhm.
I have built up this connection for the last 45, 50 minutes.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of the stuff I do at the end is more of a risk because I feel like that's the only place I can put it.
Right, right. And you kind of break rules as far as what the professional comedians talk about as far as like last per minute. You are not a bam, 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 last per minute type person. You have a little bit longer of a setup. I like to say that you would fit in with the UK crowds and the Australian crowds very much because I talk to those types of comedians and they say that you can set up a joke for 20 minutes and everybody is still okay with it, but you are a lean in type person. So even during your setup, if they're not laughing, they want to know what's coming
Yeah.
because your setup is just that interesting and it really draws them in. Did you have trouble with that at the beginning? Because did bookers like say, "Hey, get to the punchline quicker" or anything like that?
I have trouble with it now. I can't get on certain shows because I'm so long winded, but I want to be like,
Uh-huh.
but if the laugh equals out the end and if they're interested the whole time, why do I have to be a bump, bump, bump comedian?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm still frustrated by it because I've gained a fan base being who I am. I've gotten stronger as a comic being who I am. And I'm different than a lot of people. And I think I stand out in all the right ways. But TV and many of the traditional formats are, if I wanted to be on America's Got Talent, it's 90 seconds. That doesn't even make one of my jokes.
Yeah.
Most of my jokes are 2 to 3 minutes.
Hmm.
So it's one of the reasons I've had to be more self-made. It's one of the reasons I've had to um, uh, challenge myself and do things outside the box because my format is different. But I now consider myself a storyteller. And I'm not saying people don't respect storytellers. Look at uh, uh, Mike Birbiglia or like a Tom Segura or God, there's so many great storytellers. I can't think of them right now. But there's people out there that take you on a journey and you accept that it's not this bump, bump, bump kind of thing because they built up trust. But or Dave Chappelle's a great example. And I think he even said, as long as you're interesting, you don't have to be funny. And
Hmm.
I try to be both, but I like taking people on a journey. And I think I've been yelled at about it my entire career, and then I just got really good at it and I never changed. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's being stubborn or if it's because it was always who I was. The difference between on-stage Liz and off-stage Liz is on-stage Liz is a lot funnier.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
could you imagine you hear the same story and there was no punchline? My friends and family are so disappointed. So they always get the early first draft version, and it's like, ooh, that's 5 minutes of my life I won't get back. So, be thankful that you're the 80th person hearing this story, but also, it's as long as you get the reaction you're supposed to get, who cares how long it takes you to get there? Now, again, I do believe you have to be interesting and you have to have earned that trust. I build up a trust to get there.
Mhm.
When you watch me live, I tend to do a lot of shorter jokes in the beginning so that I
Yeah.
earn that trust.
Mhm.
But I'm grateful. I don't know if it's stubbornness or genius, but
Mhm.
I'm grateful that I didn't listen.
Yeah, and I am too. And one of the things I notice is if I listen to you, because I listened to a lot of your stuff while I was driving, versus watching you, it's totally different.
Yeah,
You, uh, the way you emote, even when you're not emoting that much, when it's it feels like I'm drawn in more when I'm watching than when I'm listening.
yeah.
Just listening, and I think that that is definitely something in your favor, but it also it also can be a hindrance if somebody listens to you and say, "Well, it takes her too long to get to the punch." And then they don't give you another chance. But I think when you put that whole first album on YouTube, I think that that really gave you the jump start that you needed to really gain those fans, and they were more patient with you.
I mean, I think that's a great observation. I don't think I realized how much I was doing with my face, and you know, I can see how I take a lot of pauses, and I take my time in a lot of ways, and I can see how when you don't have the focus of what somebody's doing, or even just seeing them, how that could disengage them in a lot of ways, as opposed to like, especially if you're listening to me, you might be like cleaning your car or driving. You could always like switch or go do something else. But when you see
Mhm.
somebody live, or if it's visual, you're locked in.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's a very different experience. You So much of your stuff is so personal, and it's stuff that really happened. Do you when this stuff happens, first of all, are you always looking for things to happen? And second off, when something happens like the uh, greeting card lady or stuff like that, do you know when you're walking away that you've got something, or does it take a while for that to sink in?
Greeting card lady was still in front of me paying, and I was writing down notes
Yeah.
from, like, it was so, I become so uber, like, so when a good comic is observant, and
Mhm,
I went from being observant to the world to being observant of myself, and a lot of myself is personal, so I'm very uber aware. And my most of my jokes come, I always say, like, my jokes come from strong emotions. It's
mhm,
super excited, super depressed, overjoyed, um, uh, completely, angry, just totally confused, like these strong emotions. And so when I find myself in a strong emotion, I clearly have this moment where I almost kind of laugh at myself, where I'm just like, I want to throw my computer through the window because I cannot log in to my
yeah,
gas bill.
yeah.
Like, and just knowing that, like, knowing me, I would be like, fucking, I don't need gas anymore. Like, just fuck everything. Like, I'm gonna burn my apartment to the ground, and that'll be a gas bill. Like, just this, like, I can see when I'm just being crazy. And sometimes, not even sometimes, I would say 50% of the time, I'm just talking to a girlfriend, crying, screaming, venting about something that's going on, and they are dying. Like, they know
Mhm,
me, and they know that it's okay that I'm crying about something. And, and they're like, "Hey, I know you're sad, and I'm sorry you're sad, but just, can you write that down? You know what?
yeah.
I'll write it down and I'll text it to you." Because I'm just being my crazy self, and I'm not even in comedy mode. I'm just in I hate everything mode, and my friends know enough to be like, this is gold.
Uh-huh,
um my closer right now of my new hour, uh I went through a breakup. I broke up with my ex, and he wrote me an email that made me crazy, like, just a fucked up email. And I
uh-huh,
called up my best friend, and I'm ranting to her, just ranting. And, and I'm crying, and it's just whatever. And then 3 days later, she calls me up and she goes, "I think you need to write this down." And she goes, "I've said this to 3 people. You made this analogy while you were ranting. And I've said it to a couple of people that are like, that's brilliant. Like, that's
uh-huh.
hilarious. And that's brilliant." She's like, I don't exactly know what to direction you would take it, but you should write it down. So I was like, it was like, she heard me, but I was just crying. So I wrote it
Yeah.
down and it just flowed out of me, and it's my closer. And it's, it's not bump, bump, bump funny, because clearly God knows I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to bump, bump, bump funny, but it's a real journey. And I wouldn't say it's like I'm ending on my best joke. I would say I'm ending on my most open joke, and and just like an honest perspective of what it is to care about somebody and be all in, and have them just not be able to be all in back, and what that means. And it's like very ranty and it's all over the place. And I've had friends that have seen it live be like, that could be like a one person show, and who knows. But that's where I'm starting to feel safe. I'm not famous, but I have my fan base, and people like what I do. And I think both the pandemic and my latent success have made me feel safe enough to just be the comic I want to be. And that might not always be punch you in the face funny. It might just be, oh shit, funny.
When you have something that is so emotionally triggering and you make it into a joke, how are you able to cartme com
I can't say that word
compart
either. Compartmentalize.
compartmentalize yeah, what you said. How are you able to take that on stage and not let your true emotions come in and just totally fuck the whole thing up?
I am letting my true emotions in. I'm angry.
Okay.
I'm
And
angry.
you've put it completely out there, and so it's just
So really the
what we
real
hear
question
is the raw it's the raw emotion.
the real question is, how do you tap into that anger when you're not angry anymore? Because the
Yeah.
truth is, the earlier versions of that, I'm not acting. I'm mad.
Uh-huh.
I wrote that joke. My breakup was around this time last year. So I wrote that joke almost a year ago. It took me a while
Mhm.
to polish it. I'm not really that angry anymore.
Mhm.
So it's really, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I've healed, I've moved on, Um, so really in the beginning, I am being myself. I am feeling that pain and that hurt. I often I filter a lot through anger, whether
Mhm.
I'm sad or frustrated or confused, or it comes out a lot as anger. To the point where, like, this is a very yelly hour, and I'm
Mhm.
working on it being a little less yelly,
Yeah.
being a little less myself. Um, but I think more importantly is the acting that then goes into a bit that I once felt completely and I don't feel anymore. And that's
Right.
also why it's important for me to turn over my hour, because I'd rather everything be fresh and relatable both to myself and
Uh-huh.
to other people than do a bit about a breakup 6 years later. I don't care. Nobody else cares. Move
Yeah.
on.
So with that being so you're not angry anymore, and with that being a pivotal part of your new hour, do you need a little bit of quiet time to get back into that space before you start doing it? Do you is there I
Not
what do
really.
you do to trigger the anger? I mean, is it just
The
you
words
know it's
trigger it.
coming?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
words trigger it, and just, the pacing of it triggers it. It's,
Mhm.
the same way that, like, you have the same feeling when you listen to a song.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? You get really jazzed, or you get really, like, fucking angry, or you fucking just, you know what I mean? Like, there's great music to, like, work out to, there's great music to drive to. It just
Yeah.
puts you in that mood. Just saying the words put me in that mood. Like, this is
Mhm.
such a ranty, like, da 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 da, like, it's there. And there's certain ways that I use my inflection that just my voice going up triggers that, or
Uh-huh.
just saying those words. It's like certain word, you know what I mean? The same way that if I say go fuck yourself, even if I
Uh-huh.
don't mean for it to be angry, that's an angry for go fuck
Yeah.
yourself. Like,
Yeah. Right.
you know what I mean? My face scrunches up, my
Yeah.
nose gets all scrunchy. Like,
Mhm.
you're in it. There's no way. Most people will not interpret that in any other way other than combative. The words are combative. The feeling
Mhm.
comes with it. And
Mhm.
so, and what's also nice is, like, some of these jokes, like that joke is like a 4-minute joke. I
Mhm.
really just do it, I don't need to practice it anymore. So I usually just do it when I'm closing, and I get excited about it again. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a really good joke. I love this joke.
Mhm. Well, good, good. I'm happy for you. So the you mentioned, and I'm sorry, I've been listening to different podcasts and stuff you've been on. You mentioned that you're not much of a hanger. You don't like to hang like after the show and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And yet you're a good networker because that's how you've gotten where you are now. And I'm very much the same way. I like to talk to comics like before a show, but after a show, I just want to go home because I'm done.
Yeah.
And
I'm spent.
yeah, work's done. And how were you able and that's that's classic like introvert type of behavior. How were you able to force yourself into the business side of networking when it's really not a natural thing for you?
Social media. I
Mhm.
don't I wouldn't be here without social media. I'm not clearly a drinker anymore. I have social anxiety. We're not good at small talk. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? There's all these aspects to, and then also I didn't really have self-esteem or confidence in the sense that I'm just like, you need me. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, so social media, I was able to network and do FaceTime and be in front of people without having to physically be there. The same way a troll can tell you you're ugly and you should kill yourself and feel
Mhm.
nothing. I can be
Right.
like, hey, you need me to be on your show. I'm awesome and feel nothing,
Yeah.
So, there's positives and negatives to being faceless and not having to have this moment we're having right now. And
Uh-huh.
I felt it helped me have a disconnect where I didn't have to be there for the result. Like how many times, like it must be how guys feel asking somebody out where you're like, will you go out with me? And you're like, are they crying? Are they
Uh-huh.
gagging? What are they doing? Um, it's kind of the same way where you'd be like, oh, I'd love to be on your show. And you just see somebody roll their eyes or walk away from you. And that's painful. It's horrible. But,
Yeah.
somebody not returning your email, you could justify that. Oh, they get so many emails, or maybe they missed it, or maybe it went into
Yeah.
their spam folder. Or maybe they thought I was a different Liz, like whatever. And you find ways to justify, that. Also, you can do more FaceTime from writing emails to social media. I can write 10 emails. I can only go to one or two parties.
Yeah.
And then you have to get that person's attention, whatever. It was just easier. It was safer. I could get better at it. In a way, I wasn't judged by having, a cup of water at it. Like everything about it was just easier and safer. And
Uh-huh.
that's, I give, social media is absolutely evil. And I believe that, but it's also the reason I have a career. So I'm equally as grateful for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that's that makes me feel a little bit better because I as far as the whole networking part, I'm just like, yeah, hi, I'm Scott. See you later. I'm done. And I, I don't have anything left for you. Um, you talk about the friends you've made, and a lot of them are in comedy. Do you feel so? First off, everybody thinks that, like in a certain scene or stuff like that, that all the comedians are friends, and that we all hang together, and that's absolutely not true. Whether w- there's some of them we like, and some of them we don't. And for me, and I don't know if it's the same thing for you, but when you meet your potential friend, it's almost like they're holding a billboard saying, "I'm going to be your friend." You connect, especially with comedians. You connect immediately. Is that something that's happened with you?
Yeah, I mean, most of my friends I met within a couple of years of doing stand up in the open mic scene, and
Mhm.
we've been friends for over 15 years. And some of them I remember when we clicked. Like I remember the moment. My co-host Maria Shahada, I saw her at a show. I thought she was funny. We ended up all getting food afterwards. We were reading the same book, and I kind of never let her go.
Yeah.
And she's moved. She keeps trying to leave. She moved to LA for 8 years. She's now in London. Like she keeps getting further and further. And I was like, you can't get rid of me. Um, okay. Um, and then like I was talking to my friend Adrienne Appalucci actually this week, and I was like, she brought up some venue, and I go, did I meet you at that venue? She's like, I think we met each other because we were supporting another comic. And she was like, which is crazy because I never supported any, but like I was so not social. So it was even
Mhm.
crazy that I was there. And I was like, same. I was like trying to be more social and be supportive. And then I saw her at a show, and then somehow we became close, but I don't remember how it happened.
Mhm.
But I my friends are also how I've survived this business. Like
Mhm.
I wouldn't have this business is so hard. Both first it's just hard cuz you're like lost and there's no rules and comedy, nobody gives a fuck about you and it's just like a sea of traps and you just don't understand it. And then even when you start to understand comedically what you're doing, what's funny, people are accepting it, there's the whole business side which is a whole other set of traps and frustrations. And I having people that get it, have been through it, are going through it with you. It's I don't know how people like I don't know how people would do this alone. It's a really
Mhm.
really hard business, and I'm grateful that I met some incredible people, and I also know that I wouldn't be here without them.
Mhm. I've been asking a lot of, the same question to a lot of comics. I'm gonna take out the one part of it because when I ask a comic what the worst piece of advice they got, nobody wants to talk about it 'cause it brings up bad memories. What's the best piece of advice you got from a comic when you were coming up?
There's never like any advice that like blows your mind or anything. It's to me it was all about when it was. I used to one of the first people that believed in me was this comic named Jim Mandrinos, and he used to bring me on the road. And I don't know, maybe 19 or 20, and he was driving me back home. And we're almost at my apartment, and he stopped kind of short of my street, and he goes, "I wanted to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh no, I'm in trouble." Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I'm literally like he's got to be at least 20 years my senior, and I'm like, "Oh man, I fucked up at the gig. I did something wrong. I'm going to get fired somehow." Like,
Mhm.
and he goes, "Have you been writing?" And I go, "I mean, yeah." He goes, "It doesn't seem like you have anything new." And I got really defensive. Like I
Mhm.
was like, "I'm in college and I'm busy and da 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 da." And he's like, "All right, all right." He's just like, it just, you know, your growth both in getting better at this, but also your ability to do other things is from writing. And it just seems like you need to keep writing. And I was really mad at him because it was
Mhm.
like, you know, fuck you. I was at a place in my life where like you couldn't critique me in any sense, even from a kindness. And he was absolutely being kind and looking out
Yes.
for me.
Yeah.
And it took me probably about a week, and I got really sad because he was right. I wasn't writing. I was
Mhm.
just kind of resting on my laurels, and what I was doing was working, and I wasn't challenging myself. And he is the reason I started like a new system where I kind of figured out how long would it take me to write like a new 20 minutes. And I was like, okay, if I write in like how long I started to kind of understand the mathematics of my own system and be like, okay,
Mhm.
it takes me this long to polish a joke. And if I work on 2 to 3 jokes at the same time, I could write, 3 new jokes every 2 months and like whatever. And I could have a new hour in 2 years. Like I was doing all this kind of stuff. And I started to write down every time I tried a new joke. And I forced myself to always be trying new jokes.
Mhm.
And it was all because he made me acutely aware that I was kind of resting and I wasn't
Mhm.
challenging myself. And now I don't need that system. I used that system for years. Now it's just kind of innate that I need to always be working on new stuff. And it's my favorite, and it made me realize it's my favorite part is the challenge, to the point where when the pandemic happened, the only thing I wanted to work on was new stuff. I don't want to do my old stuff in a shitty Zoom show. I'm going to get the not laughs that I deserve to get. It just
Yeah.
didn't feel good. So I wanted to work on new stuff. And I came out of the pandemic with a new 45 minutes.
Mhm.
And it was all because I started a new material show. I brought 3 new jokes probably every 2 weeks, because things started to slow down. And there's a bunch of new material shows in the city that I always sign up for. Any bar show, I always do new material at. If you don't pay me, you're not getting my best stuff. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Um, I'll take a dump on your stage. I don't care. And I think it's what sets me apart from, like, I'm in my community known for somebody that always has new material and who's always writing. And I completely give my friend so much credit. It was such a important time for that shift and for me
Mhm.
to be kind of parented in that kind of sorts.
Uh-huh. So, I know Jim, and you totally encapsulated who he is. Everything he says comes out of kindness, but he's very blunt about it.
Yeah,
So
he's a good dude. He's a really good dude.
yeah, reminds me of me a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, that's good. So if folks want to find you, tell me a little bit about the what you've got going on, and also the podcast.
Yeah, so podcast is Two Non-Doctors. It's with Maria Shahada, who I mentioned, American but based in London now. So we have a weekly podcast where we talk about medical stuff with little to no accuracy,
Mm,
mostly comedy, a little bit of health.
yeah.
And then I have a book called Why Cats Are Assholes that came out March of 2021, so a couple months
Mhm.
ago, that you can buy and enjoy. I'm touring. I'm going to be in Oklahoma City and all over Texas, getting COVID, I guess. I'm fully vaccinated and wearing 17 masks,
Yeah.
and going to, I guess, not get an abortion. So I will be out in
I've
Texas.
got a mask on my desk, and I'm in my apartment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm just like, you look down and I'm just holding 15 masks.
Yeah.
But so touring Texas, and I have a bunch of other, I'm touring the next couple of months. And then hopefully I'll have be able to put out my everything's kind of backlogged, so I don't know what's going to happen with my next hour, but it's ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, and everything you can find everything at Liz Miele. So at Liz Miele on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. It's all at Liz Miele, and a lot of cat pictures. So I always tell people not to follow me on Instagram.
I love cats.
Yeah, yeah,
My yeah,
it's a small group of people that
yeah,
are willing to take in my comedy and my cats.
yeah. Well, I really, really enjoyed having you on the show,
Thanks
and
for having me.
I enjoy your comedy immensely because it is different, and it's very personal. And even though I'm a 57-year-old guy, I totally relate to a lot of it. So yeah, it's really, really good stuff, and I wish you the best. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.